All right, let me ask you something. If someone came up to you tomorrow and said, hey, I can double your money in just 2 weeks, zero risk, zero effort, would you go for it? And be honest, because a few years ago, I would have done just that. And that's basically what I did. So today we're talking about something that catches almost everyone off guard when they're, starting to chase financial freedom. And that's the pull of the quick win. We're going to break down why it's so tempting, why it almost never works, and what actually does. Now, if you've been watching this series, you know the first video I did on this subject was all about why wealth matters and actually why it's not everything. This video is about how you actually build wealth. More specifically, it's about a mental shift going from chasing hype to building something real. And I'm not going to pretend I figured this out easily. I learned it the hard way. I got swept up in one of the biggest speculative frenzies in recent memory. I rode the high, I watched it disappear, and then I had to completely rethink my relationship with money. There's a Warren Buffett quote that sums this up perfectly. He said, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. Now that sounds dramatic, but he's right. And that idea is at the heart of everything we're going to get into today. So let's get going. I want to take you back to 2017. The crypto world was absolutely on fire. Everywhere you looked, there was these things called ICOs, initial coin offerings. They were brand new projects, no track records, and they would announce a token sale. They'd hype it up across Twitter and Telegram, and the early buyers would watch the price shoot straight up in a matter of days. It felt like free money. People who couldn't explain what a blockchain was were bragging about, 100x returns. And yeah, I got sucked into that. I threw about $50 into one ICO, and on paper, it turned into $5,000. For a moment, I genuinely believed that I'd figured out something amazing. Then the market corrected hard. That token came crashing back down, and I ended up walking away with about $500. And that $500 from 50 wasn't bad, but it's a long way away from 5,000. And honestly, the worst part wasn't losing out on that money. It was the feeling, that mix of regret and frustration, the voice in my head going, why didn't you sell at the top? But that voice, that's the gambler's mindset. And recognizing that was the real lesson. So why do we fall for this? Why do so many smart people chase these one-shot miracles? I call it lottery logic. We're wired to love stories about overnight success, the garage startup that became worth $1 billion, the random coin that made some college kid a millionaire overnight. But here's what we never see. For every one of those stories, there are thousands of people who lost money, who sold too late, who never got in at all. We only see the winners, and we don't see the crowd walking away with absolutely nothing. And there's an emotional piece to this too. When your account is going up fast, it gives you a rush. It feels amazing. But that rush clouds your thinking. You stop being strategic and you start being emotional. Here's how I think about it now. Chasing quick wins is like sprinting at the start of a marathon. You might grab the lead early, but without pacing properly, without a plan, you start to burn out way before the finish line. And wealth building is a distance race, not a sprint. So that ICO crashed, and I was basically back to where I started. I felt a bit disappointed, confused, frustrated. Just that classic, why didn't I sell regret? And what I noticed in myself and in the people around me was the instinct to blame everything else. Market manipulators, whales, bad timing, anything but ourselves. But the truth, I had got greedy and I didn't do my homework. I rode a wave of hype and just hoped for the best and thought it was going to go even higher. Admitting that stings, but it was an important step to take. I watched people around me do something even worse than that. They doubled down. They took that loss and said, the next ICO will be the big one. Some of them were borrowing money, using credit, throwing everything at new projects based on nothing but a rumor that they'd seen on Twitter. It was like watching someone at a racetrack lose 3 bets in a row and then put everything on the fourth horse because, this one feels different. But here's the thing, if you see a bubble pop and you really feel it, that can be one of the most valuable financial lessons you'll ever get. Because now you know markets move in cycles, hype doesn't last, and real value doesn't just appear out of thin air. That experience is what pushed me to actually learn about how markets work. Not Reddit threads, but actual fundamentals, supply and demand, monetary policy, the concept of sound money. I went from scrolling for the next moonshot to reading economic theory and long-term strategy. Think of it like an athlete who gets injured because of bad form. The injury forces you to strip it back, rebuild properly, and come back stronger. That crash was my injury, and it made me fix my form. Okay, so let's talk about what works instead. And I want to use a parallel I come back to all of the time: physical training. You don't go from sitting on the couch to deadlifting twice your body weight in like 3 weeks. If you did try that, you're going to get pretty hurt. What you actually do is follow a program. You increase the intensity gradually. You give your body time to adapt, and over months, not days, you start seeing real progress. And that's progress that sticks. Investing is exactly the same. Sustainable returns come from consistent contributions, reinvested gains, patient accumulation over years, and not overnight miracles. And just like you wouldn't eat junk food every day and expect to perform like an athlete, you shouldn't load up on random speculative assets and expect long-term results. So here's one of the most practical tools for this slow and steady approach. It's called dollar cost averaging, DCA for short. The idea is simple. Instead of trying to time the market with one big bet, you invest a fixed amount at regular intervals, weekly, monthly, whatever fits your life. When the market's high, your money buys less. When the market's low, it buys a bit more. Over time, your average cost smooths out. And you stop trying to guess the perfect moment to get in, because nobody really can do that consistently. It also builds discipline. It makes investing a habit, like scheduling your gym days. You take the emotion out of it completely. If you'd been putting a manageable amount into Bitcoin every month since 2018, just ignoring all of the chaos, you'd have done far better than most people who try to time the highs and the lows. Now, I'll be honest with you, slow gains feel super boring, especially compared to a 10x spike. That's the real psychological hurdle here. But you have to retrain how you think about it. Every month you invest, every small deposit, that's a win. That's a brick in the wall of what you're building. You're not gambling anymore, you're building, and every brick matters, even when the building doesn't look impressive yet. That get rich quick mindset tries to compress years of growth into just days, and it almost never works. The patient approach treats time as your greatest asset, and that makes all of the difference. There's a concept from Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that really landed for me once I started seeing things differently. Most of us grow up with what I'd call the employee mindset. Money equals wages. You earn it by trading hours. More money. Fewer hours, less money. And the second you stop working, that income stops. The investor mindset flips that. You take some of what you earn and you put it into things that generate returns on their own. Stocks that pay dividends, property that earns rent, assets you believe will grow. Over time, those things start working for you while you're asleep, while you're on holiday, while you're out living your life. When I was younger, I was completely in employee mode. Get that paycheck, spend that paycheck, wait for the next one. The shift happened when I realized that even a small slice of my income invested every month could eventually become its own income stream. Once the ICO frenzy calmed down, I stopped chasing hype and I started building real positions in things I actually believed in. Bitcoin and a few projects like Chainlink that I thought had genuine long-term potential. Not because someone on Twitter had said, this is going to be the next big thing, but actually from doing the reading. And that shift from gambling to investing took patience. It meant watching daily price swings and not reacting, trusting that real utility and real scarcity would win out over the noise. If you want to start making this shift, here are 3 things you can do right now. 1, automate your investments. Set up a monthly deposit into your brokerage account or your crypto wallet. Make it automatic. That way you don't even need motivation. It just happens. 2, study instead of chasing. Stop buying things that everyone's talking about. Read the research, read the white papers, and read the arguments against it too. 3, change how you think about earning more. Instead of asking, how do I get more overtime? Ask, how do I grow my asset base? That might mean a side project, a skill that turns into a product, something that keeps generating value long after you've put the work in. You don't need to quit your job tomorrow. This is about gradually moving resources into things that reduce your dependency on a single paycheck. And over time, that shift changes everything. All right, let's talk about the 3 emotions that trip people up the most: fear, greed, and FOMO. A lot of people never invest properly because they're scared. Scared they'll lose everything, scared it's all a scam, scared of what they don't understand. Then on the other side, you've got the hype crowd jumping in with no plan at all. The answer is somewhere in the middle. Healthy skepticism paired with real research. The more you understand something, the less your decisions are driven by emotion. That's what I mean by conviction through knowledge. And then there's FOMO. This one is pretty rough, especially in fast-moving markets. You see something double overnight and your brain goes, get in now before it's too late. But 9 times out of 10, that moment is near the top. And here's how I handle it now. I tell myself, if this thing is truly transformative, it's going to keep growing over months and years. I don't need to catch every spike. I stick to my allocation plan and I accept that some opportunities will pass me by. And that's okay. Wealth building isn't about hitting a home run every time. It's about showing up and hitting base hits again and again. Building this kind of emotional resilience takes time. It comes from experience, from living through a few market cycles and learning not to overreact. It comes from your circle, surrounding yourself with people who believe in steady growth instead of gambling. And it comes from setting rules in advance, knowing when you'll buy, when you'll pull back, what would make you rethink your entire approach. Think of it like a hard workout. Your mind is screaming at you to stop, but you planned this session and you trust your program, so you push through. Same thing with investing. Trust your plan and ride out the discomfort. I want to close with what I think is the single most powerful idea in all of wealth building, and that's the power of compounding. It's been called the 8th wonder of the world, reportedly by Einstein. And whether that quote is real or not, the maths behind it definitely is. Let me give you a scenario. Person A invests $200 a month from age 25 to 35 and then stops completely. No more contributions. They just leave it alone to do what it does from the compounding. Person B starts later at 35 and invests $200 a month all the way until they're 65. So person B puts in 3 times more money. But here's the point. Person A gave their money something person B never can, and that is more time. Those early contributions from person A get decades to compound, to grow on top of growth. And in many cases, despite investing far less, person A actually ends up close to or even ahead of person B. That's the power of starting early, and that's the power of long-term compounding growth. And that's exactly why get-rich-quick schemes aren't of any interest to me anymore. They depend on short bursts. They completely ignore that quiet engine of compounding that builds real wealth. And when you automate your investments and let them run, you stop stressing about timing. You free up headspace for your career or your health, or most importantly, your family. And in the background, that snowball keeps getting bigger. So similar to consistent gym sessions beating random intense workouts, Consistent investment beats occasional speculation every time because the compounding works. You might see someone make a big quick win from a gamble, but then what you don't see is 10 years later, that repeated gambling actually led to them losing all of their money in the end, whilst the compounding guy is there still building his wealth. So here's where I'll leave you. Going from I want massive gains right now to building something that actually lasts is more than a strategy change. It's a personal evolution. It's that same shift you feel when you stop dreading your workouts and start loving the process because you see the results over long term. Quick wins can happen, but they rarely last. What lasts is discipline, consistency, and a plan you actually trust. An investor's mindset instead of a gambler's. And here's what surprised me the most. Once you commit to the long game, you actually feel calmer. You stop chasing, you stop panicking, you just build month by month, year by year. Playing the long game doesn't just grow your bank account, it builds your character. It teaches you patience, resilience, and the ability to see past today's noise towards something that's much bigger. If any of this hit home for you, I'd love to hear about it. Drop a comment and tell me what's one get rich quick lesson that you've learned the hard way. Hit like and subscribe and turn on those notifications so you can catch the next video. And if you haven't seen the rest of this series, the playlist is going to pop up at the end of the video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.